Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It is Sunday, September 8th, 2024. The time now is 9:03 p.m. Eastern Time. Tonight, I wanted to go over a patent from the 2000s. It's a very interesting, very futuristic patent that has to deal with generating wormholes. And if you've never heard of John St. Clair, I suggest you do some research on his patents or his application for patents. That none of them were ever, as far as we know here in the United States, were ever approved. Now, this latest patent that he did back in 2002 is a way to generate a magnetic vortex wormhole. And I just wanted to go over the description of this patent and supposedly what the patent is able to do. He also has a propulsion system patent that I'll read to you tomorrow. But I think it's interesting because we're seeing a lot of UFOs and a lot of advanced technology. I was reading some information on in the 70s, the British Railroad Board took out a patent on a 1973 spacecraft. And I saw a patent for another UFO or spacecraft out of Russia. And I think that was done in the 60s. So the majority of flying saucers that we're seeing flying around the world are probably man-made. And a few of those that we're seeing in space are probably man-made. And I think this is important because we're talking about 70 years at least of advanced technology that doesn't require fossil fuels, or what we call fossil fuels, or some of the damaging fuels that we use now. So let me go ahead and go. And for the person, hey, you, I know there's only 4 people on here, but I know who you are. You're not going to deter me from talking about these subjects. It's been years already. Do you understand? I will continue talking about these subjects because we have advanced technology that can get us to the moon. We don't need SpaceX. We don't need Blue Origin. We have modern technology that goes back 70 years that was able to go to the moon in the 1950s and prior to that. Okay, the Nazis had their own UFOs, and that was in the 40s. So for all you other military personnel and all you other people that are sending energy, you can screw yourself. I'm going to talk about this. So let's get into it. Sorry, guys. You have these Satanists that work for the government and Satanists that are in Canada still, that they don't want people to talk about these things because then it takes away from their secret programs. And it's, we're in the times now that we need to bring this out to the world for everyone, not just for the rich, not just for the ruling class. This needs to be used by the world's population. It needs to be for the benefit for the world's population. Period. Okay? Your iPhone is more advanced than your vehicles. Okay? That should tell you all you need to know. Your smartphones, your smart TVs, your iPhones, their artificial intelligence, it's more advanced than the vehicle that you're driving today. We're still driving cars and motorcycles the same way we were driving them in the early 1900s. And that's ridiculous. So let's get into it. So the magnetic vortex wormhole generator, this was, I guess the application went in on April 20th, 2002. This invention relates to the magnetic vortex generator, which has the ability to generate negative mass and a negative spring constant, which, according to Einstein's general theory of relativity, is required in order to create a stable wormhole between our space and hyperspace. Two separate but electrically connected toroidal coils of differing radii carry magnetic flux in opposite directions about their common center line. According to Maxwell's equation, this produces bucking electric fields along said certain lines. Because the two solenoids have different radii, the parallel spring constant, both coils in negative. The negative mass together with the negative spring constant produce a real resonant frequency which can distort the space-time curvature due to the creation of powerful spikes of negative mass. This phenomenon, similar to the common electrical thunderstorm, opens up a wormhole into hyperspace through which low-density hyperspace energy can enter into our dimension. This energy finds many applications in new types of power supplies. This is inertia-less and mass-less spacecraft, and these vehicles that can travel light years by moving out of dimension through hyperspace, surgery-less medical tables, cranes for lifting heavy objects, cold welded crystals for crystal rotors, folding space waveguides, and electric magnetic field propulsion vehicles. This is using highly relativistic fields. The description of this invention, or the summary, this invention, which is the subject of my presentation application, is comprised of two solenoid wounds with a common wire in opposite directions. Now, the background of this invention, because the magnetic flux in the laminates travels in the opposite directions along the arcs. From the theory of gravitational physics, a negative mass is requisite to producing a wormhole because it allows the throat of the wormhole to remain open and stable. The creation of the wormhole is facilitated by the appearance of a negative spring constant, which allows the space-time curvature to resonate to such a degree That said wormhole develops between our dimension and another codimension of hyperspace. Because the physics constants of hyperspace are different from ours, the wormhole allows hyperspace energy, having a low speed of light, to enter our dimension. Because electromagnetic fields obey the Lorentz transformation, it is now possible with this lower velocity of light to create huge relativistic fields which can drive the new electromagnetic field propulsion vehicles. So he's talking about, you know, creating a wormhole, and also in his other patents he's talking about a spacecraft. Now, the background of this invention, the idea for this coil configuration, comes from the observation of powerful thunderstorms, as described by physicist Dr. Richard Feynman. And this is in his lectures on physics. Upon reading his explanation, I realized that the thunderstorm is actually a hyperspace physics phenomenon. After the passage of a large lightning storm, people have observed that a car tire rim has merged uh, with the trunk of a tree growing in the ground. Due to the large branches of the tree, there is no possible way that it could slide down the branch and around the tree trunk. It was observed also that a straw of wheat became embedded in the hardwood of a telephone pole. It turns out that the thunderstorm offers an explanation as to how this can occur. After reading Feynman's explanation, it can be seen that the key to this phenomenon is that there is a downward and upward lightning bolt, sometimes occurring together if the leader branches into two paths. Bolts of lightning also like to strike tall objects, such as a telephone pole or trees. Now, an electrical current moving downward produces a clockwise magnetic B field, as seen from above. On the return stroke, the current is moving upward, which produces a counterclockwise magnetic B field. Thus, the thunderstorm produces two huge bucking magnetic B fields, which is the magnetic geometry of this magnetic vortex generator. Using my tetrahedron diagram, I will then show that the low density hyperspace energy, with its low speed of light, is able to pull the rim out of the dimension so that it can merge with the tree at the moment the lightning strikes. It is the object of this invention to produce two toroidal, oppositely directed magnetic flux fields in two separate yet electrically connected solenoids. Because the lines of the flux are traveling in toroidal curved sheet transformer, the long arcs of different curvature, the fields produce what is known in gravitational physics as negative mass. Negative mass has the property that if you project it onto a hot surface, the surface will cool rather than heat up. The negative mass, together with the resonance of the space-time curvature involving a negative spring constant, create a wormhole in hyperspace. The interdimensional connection allows low speed of light hyperspace energy into our dimension, which can be used to decrease the weight of an object or produce huge relativistic electromagnetic fields that can be used to drive the new electromagnetic field propulsion spacecraft. Then he has a bunch of figures, which I don't have here right now. He shows a magnetic vortex generator. He shows the coils, the exterior laminations, the coil variables. And then he gets into the Faraday electromagnetic tensor, the parallel space-time spring constant, the cylindrical metric tensor, which includes the magnetic fields. Then he continues with the description. The fact that the negative mass is required to keep the throat of the wormhole, he calls it the throat of the wormhole, the throat of the wormhole open, has been shown to be valid by the physicist Dr. Kip Thorne in the enclosed reference physics paper. The key point of this invention is that if you have a negative mass, you also require a negative spring constant in order to get a real frequency and vice versa. The angular frequency of vibration is equal to the square root of the spring constant K, which is divided by the mass m. If the mass is negative and the spring constant is positive, the frequency is imaginary. Therefore, in order to get a real frequency, the spring constant has to be a negative. Okay, then he gets into the magnetic vortex generator consists of a large toroidal solenoid and its support structure, which is a small toroidal coil. The two solenoids are wound with a common wire in opposite directions, and then on two separate toroidal curved sheet transformation laminations. From the right hand rule, a changing circular magnetic field in the direction of the fingers produces a linear electrical field in the direction of the thumb. Okay, now he's talking about actually doing this, the person actually doing this themselves. This duplicates the thunderstorm conditions. A perspective view of the generator is shown. Let's get into the hyperspace. Hold on. Okay, the geometry of hyperspace physics is based on the geometry of the tetrahedron, which is circumscribed by the sphere. The corners of the tetrahedron touch the sphere at a latitude of 19.47122.063, which turns out to be, in terms of planet cosmology, the location where all the large volcanoes and vortices occur on Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune. Furthermore, the cosine squared of this angle, which is the spring constant ratio for the magnetic vortex generator, that is, the coil is interacting with the geometry of space-time, which is why it is such an effective wormhole generator. As will be demonstrated later, the tetrahedral geometry of hyperspace. This is why you don't want me to talk about this. Oh, buddy. Oh, so now what I'm going to do, guys, instead of going through all this, I'm going to post a patent online on my X account. So I'm going to finish this part and I'm just going to let you read it yourself. I'm going to post the whole patent. This is why they don't want us to talk about this. What do you all know about tetrahedrons? Just think about this. Where have you heard the tetrahedron being mentioned? You've heard it in the spiritual practices, okay? And where else have you heard it? This is if you understand what this patent is talking about, it's going to blow your mind. And you're going to understand why these occultists don't want people to look into this and talk about it. Because you're actually talking about bending space and time. Not only can you do it with technology, but human beings themselves are technology. And they themselves, as flesh and blood, or whatever you want to call us, we're able to do this ourselves. We can bend space and time. This is why they don't want anybody to talk about these things. Okay, guys, let me finish it up and I'm going to post it on X. The link to X is in the description. Read the whole application of this patent and read it again and read it again if you don't understand certain parts of it, and you're going to get what this is about. Okay, so let me read this last part. Okay, let me read this last part. The geometry of hyperspace physics is based on the geometry of the tetrahedron, which is circumscribed by the sphere. Okay, and I'm going to explain also something about the sphere. When people see spirits or ghosts and they see orbs in pictures and video, okay, that's a sphere. The whole essence of a being, of a soul, is in that sphere. Oh my God, this is blowing my mind right now. Is in that sphere. Okay, just think about that. The tetrahedron, which is circumscribed by that sphere. The corners of the tetrahedron touch the sphere at a latitude of 19.47, etc., which turns out to be, in terms of planet cosmology, the location where all the large volcanoes and vortices occur on Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune. Now think about this. What happens? What are volcanoes doing? How are volcanoes formed? Dude, this is just like I'm seeing images and images in my head right now. How are volcanoes formed? When you go into the center of the earth, how many layers of different uh, material, let's just call it that, because it's more than that, but let's call it material. How many different materials are in the layers going down to the core? We have crystals in there. We have gases. We have other types of metals. Volcanoes generate energy. Just think about that. Sit with that. Okay, furthermore, the cosine squared of this angle is 8.9, which is the spring constant ratio for the magnetic vortex generator. This is the coil, and it's interacting with the geometry of space-time, which is why it is such an effective wormhole generator. As will be demonstrated later, the tetrahedral geometry of hyperspace shows that the electron and the photon are one and the same particle. I will repeat that again. The tetrahedral geometry of hyperspace shows that the electron and the proton are one and the same particle. This is a new discovery in science coming out of this research. The diagram also shows that when the speed of light is reduced due to the low density of energy coming into our dimension through a wormhole, Planck's constant divided by the speed of light puts the electron at the boundary between space and hyperspace. That is, the electron and the proton go out of the dimension, which is the reason that the car tire rim can become merged with a tree. Now, this you also have to look into, this is how quantum entanglement, this is part of the quantum entanglement part. And we now know that particles go in and out of space, atoms go in and out of space, and we forever and a day we were trying to figure out where the atoms or where the particles were going when they were not being when they were not in the location. Okay, that is, the electron and the proton go out of the dimension, which is the reason that the car tire rim can become merged with the tree. The ramifications of this magnetic vortex generator are enormous. It means developing new types of crystals through the interdimensional merging, which will be needed in the development of these spacecrafts and their crystal rotors. It means the possibility of teleportation. Quantum entanglement, teleportation. Possibility of teleportation spacecraft through hyperspace over distances of light years. This is using the new folding space waveguides. It means that lightweight or inertialess spacecraft, which can be accelerated at hundreds of thousands of Gs. It means that the ability to lift extraordinary loads in construction work. It means surgery-less medical tables, where tumors can be pulled directly out of the patient's body. Pay attention to what he said there. Tumors can be pulled out of the body. Pulled out of the body, not cut out of the body. This is where you can walk through. Have you ever heard somebody, the people that say that they've been taken by extraterrestrials? Again, when they say that the extraterrestrial can go through walls, this is exactly what John St. Clair was doing and talking about in this patent. It's the same thing. And when then you see the UFOs appear and disappear. Because we have a magnetic spring, then there is some resonant frequency at which the coil can be operated in order to create a large space-time distortion. It is this distortion that creates the wormhole into hyperspace. From this, it follows that the wormhole attaches to a low-pressure region with a magnetic monopole. Because pressure is linear, mass times the speed of light, a low pressure signifies a low speed of light and less dense matter. What this means is that the opposite polarity space-time curvature at two ends of an electrode will produce a voltage along the electrode, effectively creating a power supply. The reason for this is that space-time curvature, as shown by Einstein's general theory of relativity equation, is equal to the square of the electromagnetic fields in the stress energy tensor T. So the curvature on the ends of the electrode appear as voltages, and the system acts as a battery supply to power the spacecraft. The other characteristic of the magnetic vortex generator is that it can pull objects. It can pull objects out of a dimension, allowing the object to apparently move through solid walls. The object doesn't actually move through the wall because the object is not in the same dimension as the wall. So, okay, so here's another thing. So they're in a it's like ghosts, right? Or like demons or angels. They're in another dimension. Okay, they can be in, 3 dimensions up, 3 dimensions down. So this is what he's trying to say, that it doesn't go anywhere. It just goes through, I guess you can say, through dimension, but through time and space. So the characteristic of the magnetic vortex generator is that it can pull objects out of the dimension, allowing the object to apparently move through solid walls. The object does not actually move through the wall because the object is not in the same dimension as the wall. It just appears that way. Moving out of the dimension and then back again on the other side of the wall would effectively move the object through the wall for all intents and purposes. The tetrahedron diagram is a physics diagram which plots the natural logarithm of mass to the natural logarithm of wavelength. The product of mass times wavelength is equal to Planck's constant divided by the speed of light. So the product of the electron mass times its wavelength is equal to the proton mass times its wavelength, which is equal to the Planck mass times the Planck wavelength. We live in a Planck box, which is bounded by the Planck wavelength and Planck mass. outside this box is hyperspace. And then he, continues to talk about the Planck wavelength, the speed of light, speed of light being canceled by uh, the other part. Hyperspace has a low linear mass compared to our dimension. Therefore, Planck's constant is reduced when this energy enters our dimension through the wormhole that is created. Let's see here. Okay, the electron moves out of the dimension because the electron and the proton are one and the same particle, as shown in the reference of the tetrahedron diagram. The proton and then the proton, hence the entire atom, is taken out of the dimension as well. So this is exactly what happens to us when we die, right? When we no longer have this body that's vibrating on this frequency in this dimension. Our spirit, which is normally in another dimension, because it's a soul, it's a spiritual being. Once it's no longer trapped by our body, right? Because our body's vibrating in a heavy, I guess you can say, in a heavy frequency, it's released and it goes into another dimension. Or, yeah, I guess you can say it goes into another dimension because the people that are still in their bodies can't see the spirit of that person. Man, this is a trip. This is what we're seeing in the skies, folks. When you see, if you've ever seen a UFO or some flying object that goes in and out of space, this is what you're seeing. Okay, let me see if he has anything else that's interesting here. Talks about the transformers. The frequency oscillation. Okay. It talks about the pressure regions of hyperspace are similar to the pressure produced by a dam holding water. The upper surface of the water, where there is no water, where there is no water pressure, is analogous to the black void into which our universe is expanding. There is a region just above us having a lower water pressure, which corresponds to the low density hyperspace energy. Let me see. Uh, We already read that. He goes into more claims. Due to the fact that the magnetic flux travels within a laminations at a curvature equal to the universe of the radius squared, each coil produces a spring constant which depends on the current and lamination area, magnetic field strength, and the individual curvature of each coil. I'm going to go ahead and post this now because it's going to take you a while to read through this, and you'll probably have to read through it several times to understand it. But if you can sit with this, just know that we already have the capability to go to Mars, to the moon, to the center of the galaxy. We've had this ability since the 50s, and even more interesting is the human being or humankind or mankind can actually do this themselves. We are able to create wormholes and portals. Actually, we are portals. We have things that are called chakras. I know a lot of people don't like talking about the chakras, but the chakras are portals. And anybody that does meditation, anybody that, that studied Buddhism, Hinduism, they understand this. It's very powerful. but it's very dangerous to mess with your chakras, which is your portals. All right, guys. The X link is in the description. I'm going to put the patent up. Take a look at it, read through it, sit with it, share it with your friends, talk about it. It's trippy. And then go into researching John St. Clair's other application patents. He has some very, very interesting stuff. And for my hater Satanists, this one's for you. I'm going to come back tomorrow, same time, with another patent that talks about, hold on. So tomorrow I'll be back with another patent from John St. Clair that talks about full body teleportation system, where he gets into, he has diagrams. He talks about hyperspace. He talks about the magnetic vortex generator. He talks about this invention is a system that teleports a human being through hyperspace from one location to another using a pulsed gravitational wave gravitational wave, which is traveling through hyperspace. Okay, we'll get into that one tomorrow. And it's really trippy. The device, it's not even a device. It's just a bunch of coils that you stand on and you just use your chakras. Hold on. Let me get back here. All right, guys. Head on over to X. I'll put it up now. And haters, keep on hating. I love you too. Bye.